I watched Daphne and Velma and it was... I already know the answer. I remember seeing the trailer for this movie and thinking, wow, this looks like shit. And here I am giving this movie a look, as if anything of merit was expected. You know, it's funny, before I watched this, I actually didn't know this was going to be a kids movie. I mean, looking back, it actually makes sense given the source material, but for some reason, this initially didn't cross my mind. Of course, after watching the movie, I could immediately tell that this was no higher than a PG movie. Although not necessarily because everything felt innocent and non-adult, it's more because the overall direction felt like I was watching a kids movie, which in other words, this felt really cheap. The cinematography was kind of bland and mediocre, and there were a couple of moments where the shot wasn't even stable. Like, there were some scenes where I could tell the camera was supposed to move very slowly to add subtle motion, but there are several other scenes where the shot was clearly meant to be flat and still, but the camera was shaking a little bit. It's as if they were using an unbalanced tripod or not using it at all. Like, was this meant to be some kind of directing style? I also hated whenever they wanted to close in to someone's face in order to emphasize a negative or blood rushing emotion, but the movement just felt too unnatural, artificial, and distracting. Now, to give the movie credit, there was one scene that took place in one of those live events meant to announce upcoming large branded products, and I gotta say, they did manage to visually emulate the feeling of watching those events. Although you also have scenes like this where they're switching the framing of the shot. Like, I'm not angry, but I have to ask, why? Like, what was the purpose of this exactly? Also, who designed this website? It looks like garbage. I also want to know how Daphne managed to alter an audio file by typing a bunch of nonsense. The music composition was boring, no better than what I would expect from a typical live-action Disney teen movie. So in other words, boring stock music. There are also a few moments where they would play this really generic theremin sound, which kind of pisses me off because I like this instrument and they're making it look bad. Although where the movie would completely lose me was whenever they would have these little cartoony moments like usage of over-the-top sound effects and the really corny chase scenes, which was obviously meant to emulate the style of Scooby-Doo. Although the thing is, live-action movies trying to be cartoony usually end up backfiring. Animation has the advantage of getting away with certain unrealistically goofy and nonsensical ideas and gags for the simple fact that it's just a bunch of drawings that can talk and move. Live-action content doesn't have that advantage. It is possible to succeed in that, but you have to establish the right tone and invest more work and money into the animation and aesthetics so that it can be polished enough to suspend the viewer's disbelief. Unfortunately, this movie is cheap as hell, so surprise surprise, I can't take any of those cartoony moments seriously because they look stupid. Oh, and speaking of which, look at this cover, it looks like shit, Jesus fucking Christ. So for any of you who are wondering how the story was, it was generally boring. It took 15 minutes for the main characters to have some sort of interaction with the supernatural creature after the endless amount of cock teasing. And what we had to keep the story moving before the creature finally showed up was some drama between Daphne and Velma, which admittedly had some potential. Now, when I saw Velma neglecting Daphne, I knew it was because she was hiding something that she didn't want Daphne to find out, otherwise she would be in some sort of danger. But given her amount of bitter neglectfulness, I was hoping to witness some kind of secondary motive that would add more emotional layer to their relationship and Velma's character. Unfortunately, not only was that not the case, but their conflict was resolved in one of my least favorite ways. They were arguing until something silly happened that led them to simultaneously laugh, and just like that, everything is fine between the fucking hell. I always hate this trope because it feels like a cheap way of forwarding character development. By the way, I'm not very into Velma's acting performance. Daphne is actually fine, but Velma just feels like the actress didn't care that much about her role, which I don't actually blame her. But don't worry, you also have a character arc involving Daphne trying to be independent and fighting her own battles instead of her dad sneakily protecting and aiding her in every little detail of her life, and she never noticed that for over 10 years? Am I supposed to take this seriously? I don't know. They're kind of aware that this is silly, but it's also a trivial plot element that's a driving key for the dramatic moments with Daphne. But there is something else I'd like to comment on. You know how in Scooby-Doo the strongest suspects are usually never the criminals behind the masks, which is one of the biggest criticisms the franchise receives? Well, it's the same here, except they remove the part where the real criminal is the one you least expect by making it very obvious that Carol is the one responsible, with this little scene where it's heavily implied that she's both sneaking and hiding something. Overall, this movie is actually very clever, and no, not because of its overall quality, because it's a complete dumpster fire. It's clever because Carol's character is actually a commentary on Alison Brie. I mean, look at her, she looks exactly like Annie from Community. And what did the two of them have in common? They look young. In Community, at the start of the series, Annie was 18, but the actress was actually 27. So Alison Brie, even in her late 20s, managed to look like a teenager for her role. It's the exact same thing with Carol's character. In universe, she's actually 26, disguised as a teenager, but she still looks like one, and the movie actually commented on that. So yeah, this movie gets a 9 out of 10 for this very likely accidental parody of Alison Brie. Anyway, don't watch this movie, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bye for now.